Hi, and welcome back. This is, unfortunately, our last film in our series on California Noir. The film is Chinatown from 1974, and perhaps it's the noirest of all. You may think you know what you're dealing with, Mr. Gitz, but believe me, you don't. About this warning, I want to say that Noah Cross intentionally mispronounces Giddy's name. So does Donald Trump when he's talking to people. It's a way of asserting power. So in Chinatown, this is the famous warning that the evil oligarch Noah Cross, played by John Huston, gives to the private eye Jake Gittes, played by Jack Nicholson. And as we know, Noah Cross is totally right about the situation Jack Nicholson faces in our film. In fact, as we've seen, this is the problem the protagonist faces in most of the California noirs we've seen. It's most clear in Vertigo and Point Blank, where the protagonist is throughout the victim of a conscious deception. But also in our first two films, Double Indemnity and Sunset Boulevard, when the protagonist is simply unclear about what's happening to him. Chinatown, like Vertigo, is a film where the ground keeps shifting under your feet. And here's where Chinatown fits in our California Noir series. You really don't know what you're dealing with expounds a general theme we've seen throughout California Noir. For instance, insurance salesman Walter Neff in Double Indemnity thinks to take advantage of a dissatisfied housewife and turn her dissatisfaction into a big payday for both of them through the murder of her dull husband. But really, Phyllis Dietrichson is in charge. She may already have taken another lover, and in the end, she kills Neff. Similarly, low-rent screenwriter Joe Gillis in Sunset Boulevard thinks he's found an easy meal ticket in old silent movie star Norma Desmond and can live off her wealth as her boy toy while writing his own screenplays. But really, Norma is manipulating him in order to return to a feeling of youth. And in the end, she kills him rather than give him up. In Vertigo, retired San Francisco police detective Scotty believes he's on the trail of a fascinating woman and her ghosts, but the woman is a fake, and he's really the fall guy in a complex murder plot. Lee Marvin's Walker in Point Blank is on a quest in Los Angeles to get the cash that's owed him for a robbery, but the head of the mob is merely using him to eliminate his rivals one by one, and in any case, Walker, like Joe Gillis in Sunset Boulevard, may be dead all along. These protagonists think they know what they're dealing with, but believe me, they don't. Jack Nicholson's Jake Gillis, charismatic though he is, turns out to be just the last in this line of hapless California noir protagonists. Okay, I'd like to give a quick summary of the plot so we're all on the same page during the lecture and discussion. You all have terms and concepts memo for this week to help you follow along. So, in 1937 Los Angeles, a woman calling herself Evelyn Mulray hires Private Eye Jake Gittes to trail her husband, Hollis Mulray, the chief engineer at the Department of Water and Power. Gittes personally photographs Hollis in the affectionate company of a very young woman, and he hands those photographs over to his client. But suddenly the photographs appear in the Los Angeles papers, exposing an apparent affair between Hollis Mulray and an underage girl. Gittes is then confronted by the real Evelyn Mulray, played by Faye Dunaway, who threatens to sue him for slander on Hollis. He now sees that an imposter was using him as a fall guy to discredit the chief engineer. Hollis's corpse is then found in a reservoir in the San Fernando Valley. Gittes discovers that huge quantities of water are being released from this reservoir each night, despite the fact that the city is in the midst of a drought. Walter Department Security Chief Mulvihill warns him off any further investigation. But Gittes doesn't listen. He's stubborn and independent, and he goes back to investigate the reservoir. And at the reservoir, his nose is slashed by one of Mulvihill's thugs, played by the director of the film himself, Roman Polanski. Working now for Evelyn, Jake investigates Hollis's death. He learns that Hollis was once the business partner of Evelyn's wealthy father, Noah Cross. Cross offers to double Giddy's fee from Evelyn if he can find Hollis's very young mistress, who has meanwhile disappeared. Public records reveal to Jake that much of the Northwest Valley has recently changed ownership. Jake and Evelyn discover that the residents of a nursing home are being used as legal fronts for the real buyer of the land, Noah Cross. They escape another attack by Mulvihill and his thugs and hide at Evelyn's mansion, where they make love. Jake later follows Evelyn to a house where he sees her comforting the missing young girl. When confronted, Evelyn says the girl is her sister, Catherine. Giddy's old police department, Lou Escobar, reveals that Hollis Mulray had salt water in his lungs, indicating that he did not drown in the reservoir. At Evelyn's mansion, Giddy's retrieves a pair of glasses from the garden pond, which turns out to be a saltwater pond. And so Jake concludes that Hollis Mulray was murdered there. Jake now suspects that Evelyn is the murderer. He confronts Evelyn about Catherine, whom Evelyn now claims is her daughter. Giddy slaps Evelyn until she reveals that Catherine is both her sister and her daughter. Catherine's father is Evelyn's own father, Noah Cross, who impregnated Evelyn when she was 15. Jake arranges for the two women to flee to Mexico and tells Evelyn to meet him at her butler's home in Chinatown. He summons Cross to the Mulray estate, having deduced that it was Cross who dropped his glasses when he drowned Hollis in the pond. Ross reveals that he is behind both the LA water shortage and the land grab in the Northwest Valley. Once the land is his, a new reservoir to be paid for by LA taxpayers will water that land, giving him a huge profit when he resells it. He admits he discredited Hollis and then killed Hollis because Hollis protested the plan. Cross and his thug Mulvihill then force Jake to take them to Chinatown. It's a trap for Evelyn and Catherine. The police are in the pay of Noah Cross, and they're watching to catch them in order to turn them both over to Cross. Lou Escobar, the lieutenant, detains Giddy's as Evelyn tries to escape with Catherine, but the police open fire, killing Evelyn. Cross then takes a distraught Catherine away to do with her as he will, as he already did with Evelyn. As the traumatized and helpless Giddy's is led away by his associates, one tells him, "Forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown." In short, the bad guys thrive. Forget it, they always will thrive. Okay, so film noir always contains a protagonist, usually a detective, a female femme fatale, and a villain. So let's talk about the protagonist and the femme fatale and the villain in Chinatown. Our protagonist, Jake Giddies, is a successful private eye who specialized in divorce cases. So he starts out the film already cynical about human nature. And in the first two scenes of Chinatown, this is often forgotten. He actually advises two separate victims of infidelity to forget about it. Yes, that's what he says. Forget it. He says to them, forget about it, and to go back home and get on with life. Jake meets their suffering with a shrug. Marriage is lost illusions anyway to him. This beginning sequence and Jake's advice not to one but to two victims in succession to forget about it forms a bookend to the advice he gets at the end of the film. Forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown. That advice comes at a point at the end of the film where Jake's original cynicism about the human condition, which is shown in the first two scenes in the film, that cynicism turns out to be innocence itself compared to the evil he has now discovered. He's learned a bitter lesson in the limits of agency and the limits of justice. It's striking that Jack Nicholson's Jake in Chinatown is actually a softer and more vulnerable figure than the hard-boiled private characters Humphrey Bogart played in the 40s, from the Maltese Falcon to the Big Sleep, let alone the thug Walker in Point Blank or the even more tough Harry Callahan in Dirty Harry. Jake's softness and vulnerability is symbolized throughout the last two-thirds of the film by his grotesquely slashed and bandaged nose, a warning to him not to snoop too far. You know, a hero is supposed to look like a hero. Jake is competent, smart, relatively honest, gallant in his own way, but the fact is, he looks throughout the movie like a clown. That image conveys more information about the actual situation he's in than any words in a screenplay ever could. So, in other words, in Chinatown, the tough private eye paradigm is flipped. And the traditional femme fatale paradigm is flipped too. Noir stories often have a beautiful blonde femme fatale. Phyllis Dietrich in Double Indemnity, Madeleine Elster in Vertigo, Sharon Acker's treacherous wife in Point Blank. Certainly, Faye Dunaway's Evelyn Mulray starts out looking like that typical blonde femme fatale. And at one point, Jake actually suspects her of murdering her husband. And the audience, which at every stage only possesses as much knowledge of what's going on as Jake himself does, that's different from some noir films. But in this film, the audience only knows what Jake knows. The audience is expected to go along with these suspicions about Evelyn. But by its end, Chinatown has revealed Evelyn's actual goodness and her innocence. She's a victim, not a perpetrator. And she's courageously trying to save her daughter/sister from the clutches of her evil father. This flip of the typical femme fatale into a good, if desperate, person was the creation of screenwriter Robert Towne. So that's the hero, and that's the person who we think for a long time is the traditional femme fatale. And then there's the villain, Noah Cross. Cross is played by the famous Hollywood director John Huston, who was a proto-film noir pioneer himself with Humphrey Bogart in The Maltese Falcon 30 years earlier. And Huston had gone on to win Oscars for Best Picture and Best Director for The Treasure of Sierra Madre, 1948, A Tale of Greed. What does John Huston's Noah Cross symbolize in Chinatown? Well, one obvious point is that he's a colossally successful capitalist. But beyond the lure of immense wealth, Cross is driven by a desire to control everything and everyone within his constantly expanding reach. And he doesn't hesitate to wreak revenge on anyone who resists. His partner Hollis Mulray, his daughter Evelyn, in the end, Jake Gittes too. And it's not the wealth that pushes Noah Cross. Wealth is just a tool for him. It's the power that wealth brings that pushes Cross, including the power to control the future of Los Angeles itself. At the end, we learn that Cross is the architect of Chinatown's entire environment. He's the most powerful person in Los Angeles. He owns the police. He owns the politician. He owns the press. He owns the land and the water. He is the embodiment of a system where the wealthy and powerful operate above the law. There are no limits to him. In the world of the film, he can get away with anything, and he does get away with everything. Of course, in the world of the film, let's not forget this, he is actually the creator of modern Los Angeles. The darkest aspect of Noah Cross is, of course, his incestuous sex with his daughter Evelyn, resulting in Evelyn's pregnancy at 15 and her daughter's sister, Catherine. This shows Cross to be an apex predator who views human beings as simply possessions to be dominated. I have to say, I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to say this now. This really does sound like Trump, considering what just happened in Louisiana to a senator who defied him. His answer to Jake's accusation of incest with his daughter is stunning. I don't blame myself. You see, Mr. Giddies, most people never have to face the fact that at the right time and the right place, they're capable of anything. The final scene where he takes Catherine away to do with as he will shows that this cycle of abuse is going to continue forever. From the city's water supply to the profitable Northwest Valley land to Evelyn's innocence and then Catherine's innocence, anything Cross feels has value must be totally his, in his possession, in his control. Cross's name, of course, contains a biblical irony. The biblical Noah saved life from the flood, whereas the film's Noah, Cross, causes an artificial drought in order to steal the water. As for Cross and Nova Cross, well, he's the opposite of Jesus, isn't he? He's really closer to Satan. Cross's consistently jovial, grandfatherly exterior, a brilliant performance by John Huston, is entirely misleading. It masks a sociopathic calm and an iron will. So I want to talk about the crime at the heart of this. Film noir has to have a crime as well as protagonist, a femme fatale, and a villain. And Chinatown has two terrible crimes: the Northwest Valley water scandal and the incest committed by Cross on his daughter Evelyn. Over a period of just a few days, Private Eye Jake Giddies will solve both crimes. Yes, he does. He solves both crimes. He solves them, at least in the narrow sense that he learns the bitter truth about what's been going on. But at the same time, he's helpless in the face of Noah Cross's power, cannot bring Cross to justice, cannot stop what then happens: the shooting death of Cross's incest victim daughter, Evelyn, and Cross's pirating off his daughter/granddaughter, Catherine, for his own sordid purposes. So in this sense, too, there's a typical California noir aspect to this. That is, the quick achievement, it solves the crime, is followed by downfall and disaster. He can't stop what then happens. And so Chinatown is a classic California dream / noir story that way. Jake Giddy's failure at the end of Chinatown was insisted upon by the film's director, Roman Polanski. This led to a bitter quarrel, which actually lasted decades, with the film's screenwriter, Robert Towne. A quarrel so bitter that Towne was banned from the set. In Towne's original script, there was a happy ending, or anyway, a happier ending. Down in Chinatown, Evelyn Mulray not only shoots, but kills her monstrous father. And meanwhile, Jake spirits away Evelyn's sister/daughter, Catherine, to safety in Mexico. Evelyn will no doubt be arrested by the cops and go to prison, but Jake will wait for her. True love will triumph. And in this scenario, there is both hope and justice. It's actually a little bit like the end of Maltese Falcon, where the Humphrey Bogart character, Sam Spade, tells Eileen O'Shaughnessy that he'll wait for her when she gets out of Tehachapi in 14 years. That was what Towne intended. But Polanski insisted on the dark ending we now see. There's no justice. Cross wins at every level. Jake is left helpless. Evelyn is killed. Catherine is kidnapped. It's easy to see that this version, very dark version, originates in the murder by chance of Polanski's beloved pregnant wife, Sharon Tate, and several other of his friends, by the insane Manson family. Polanski had already lived through the Holocaust as a child. This was the second Holocaust he had to live through. He had a sense of dark forces that were beyond the control of any individual, and he insisted on filming a catastrophic ending to the film. That wasn't the ending that Town intended. This is Polanski's ending. He insisted on it. Individuals helpless in the hands of fate or chance or the system. Decades later, Robert Town conceded that Polanski had been right. It took him decades to admit that Polanski had been right, that the director's catastrophic ending was stronger than the happier ending that Town had wanted. It fit better with the entire mood of the picture than Town's own happier ending would have been. About the role of chance and Polanski, here's a true story. As it happens, I knew the writer Jerzy Kosinski, most famous for his Holocaust novel, The Painted Bird. Kosinski told me that he'd flown from London to New York the day before the night of the Tate murders, intending to fly on immediately to Los Angeles to be at Sharon's party on Cielo Drive that night. But his luggage didn't arrive at the baggage claim at JFK. He was furious. Kosinski was furious, and he spent that night steaming with anger at his luxurious New York apartment, which I've been in, waiting for his luggage to show up. It turned out that's why he was still alive when I talked to him about this. Just chance. If the luggage had been done efficiently, he'd be dead. So it's not just the fact of Evelyn's death, but the manner of her death, full of malicious intent, yet somehow random, that reflects the awful circumstances of Sharon Tate's violent end. Polanski said about the murders, "There's no lesson to be taken. There's just nothing." Chinatown as a film represents a creative zenith for almost everyone involved in its making. It was nominated for an astounding 11 Academy Awards. Jack Nicholson's complex, conflicted performance as Jake is really a high point in his career. We're told that Faye Dunaway was a terrible terror on the set, but her brittle, neurotic performance is convincing and courageous, including being slapped hard multiple times by Nicholson in take after take in the reveal scene. That slapping didn't happen just once. There were several retakes where he continues to slap her, and she put up with it in order to get the drama. That's really quite an amazing thing. Polanski himself delivers a total vision of a corrupt Los Angeles from top to bottom. He too was a terror on the set, mean to every artist and every actor. The laid-back Nicholson, who truly enjoyed acting, was the only person who had no trouble with Polanski. Everybody else did. But in any case, Polanski eventually got what he wanted from all his actors, as John Ford did, who was also a terror on the set. The photography by John Alonzo makes the washed-out, drought-stricken Los Angeles of 1937 seem very real. All of this was set to Jerry Goldsmith's Lonely Horn score with its sad, sleazy solo trumpet, which works to perfection to set the mood. And that was done at the last minute. That's how Hollywood worked. There was another musician who had been contracted to make the score. Polanski, when he heard it, hated it, contacted Jerry Goldsmith, and Goldsmith did the score in a week under time pressure to get it ready for premiere. Robert Town, the screenwriter, won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, which was an irony since Roman Polanski had overridden the happier ending Town had wanted And Town at that point was still bitter about it. So he goes up to get the Academy Award for Best Screenplay, knowing that his screenplay had been violated by Polanski in order to get the ending that Polanski wanted. And a word about Robert Evans. He was the overall head of Paramount Studios, and he was also simultaneously the personal producer of this film. He was stunningly handsome, and he owed his entire Hollywood career to silent film star Norma Shearer. Norma Shearer, then 64, discovered Bob Evans sitting at the poolside of the Beverly Hills Hotel and was entranced by him, entranced both by his beauty and his business-like energy, both of which were so similar to her beloved dead husband, the Hollywood mogul Irving Thalberg. It was Shearer who pushed Evans's acting career, including getting him a major role in A Man of a Thousand Faces, 1957, where in fact he played the role of Irving Thalberg. Shearer also introduced Evans to Woodland, the Hollywood Hills mansion where he would live for the rest of his life. She showed him, this is it, this is the place, and he said, yes, that's the place. In other words, this is Sunset Boulevard, but for real, and with a happy ending. Of course, one difference is Evans had real talent, whereas Joe Gillis didn't, in Sunset Boulevard, didn't have much. There was then a replay of this. Evans was taken under the wing of Charles Bluedorn, the head of the multinational corporation Gulf and Western, which had bought Paramount Studios. Bluedorn made Evans the president of Paramount and the head of production when Evans was only 36. It was a huge gamble by Bluedorn. Evans was a gambler himself, and strike it rich. This is a California strike it rich story. But it was a huge gamble for Evans. It was one thing to play Irving Thalberg in a movie. It was another to sit in Irving Thalberg's actual chair at Paramount. Yet this gamble paid off. Evans rescued Paramount, which had been on the verge of bankruptcy, with a string of huge hits, which he championed through the system. Rosemary's Baby, 1968, Love Story, 1970, The Godfather, 1972, and Godfather 2, 1974. It was Evans alone who pushed for the studio's financing of Chinatown, which also, again, nominated for 11 Academy Awards. He really was somebody with a huge amount of talent. While other Paramount executives thought it was a story about water rights in LA, which no one would be interested in. But Evans was a close friend of Robert Towne, and especially of Jack Nicholson, and even of Roman Polanski. And they all together loved Chinatown, loved Chinatown's view of the world, and Evans had the power to push it through to production. Otherwise, it never would have been made. And of course, it was another huge success. So Robert Evans struck it rich. His is a classic story of Southern California success. His father was a Jewish dentist in New York. And the power of luck. Norma Shearer sees him at the poolside. Charles Bluedorn falls in love with him. Except at age 42, Evans was struck down with a horrible case of sciatica. The pain was so intense that often Evans could neither stand nor could he sit. During principal photography for Chinatown, Evans had to be carried around on a stretcher. Well, he eventually found relief in cocaine, which led to its own downward spiral, the other side of the California dream. Eventually, he was going to be expelled from Woodland, and Jack Nicholson went to the person who was about to own it and got down on his knees and begged him not to buy the house so that Evans could stay in that mansion. Now, I want to talk about the water swindle. Now, this is a fascinating story. Our film Chinatown boasts such convincing storytelling that its account of the San Fernando Valley water swindle, which the film places in 1937 at the end of the Depression era, has acquired the status of accepted lore in Southern California. It's hard to remember about Chinatown's water scandal, though, that Chinatown isn't a documentary. It's fiction. The actual San Fernando water scandal depicted in the film had occurred, all right, but had occurred in 1905 to 1915, a generation earlier. Nevertheless, it's true that at the heart of Chinatown is one of the most successful land and water swindles, private enterprise projects in California history, and it's worth discussion. God never intended Southern California to be anything but a semi-desert. Into the 1880s, it was a land of dry brush and cactus. In Southern California, there's not a single river as people ordinarily think of the term. There's not a single natural lake, not a single creek with a year-round flow of water. Summer droughts are frequent, and sometimes there are droughts in winter too. Rainfall is haphazard even in winter. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it isn't. The original source of water in the LA basin was via underground water, artesian pumping from wells. But the city expanded, and this is just stunning, from 11,000 people in 1880 to 50,000 people in 1890 to 100,000 people in 1900 to 300,000 people in 1910. There wasn't enough water for such a huge population. I mean, it's an incredible jump in 30 years. The enormous Los Angeles population boom was caused first by the oil well boom. In fact, in 1900, the Los Angeles basin was producing fully 1/4 of all the world's petroleum. This soon was combined with the building of the great commercial harbor at San Pedro, and then the citrus boom, oranges and lemons, where the invention of the refrigerated railroad car meant that Southern California's citrus bounty could now be transported to the east without spoilage. This citrus boom also led to a huge influx of gamblers trying to come and make it in the citrus industry. Richard Nixon's father moved his family all the way from Ohio to gamble on a lemon ranch in Orange County and ended up impoverished. And Orange County is called Orange County because they were producing a hell of a lot of oranges. The problem was that the huge increase in the city population dramatically lowered the water level below ground. All that artesian drilling made drilling and pumping for deeper and deeper wells more and more technologically challenging and expensive. Again, nature hadn't designed the semi-arid Los Angeles basin to support 300,000 people. Meanwhile, in 1905, a syndicate financed by Harry Chandler, Harrison Gray Otis, Henry Huntington, and E.H. Harriman, the Los Angeles Suburban Homes Company, acquired most of the San Fernando Valley northwest of the city proper, where I grew up. This syndicate eventually owned the entire valley, about 108,000 acres, which was then simply dry, unirrigated wheatland. They paid between $5 and $10 an acre for it. And once in control of this vast area, the syndicate proposed to the water board of the city of Los Angeles that the city should finance a 240-mile-long aqueduct from the high Sierras to provide the fast-growing city with needed water, and it was going to come through the San Fernando Valley. The members of the San Fernando Valley Land Syndicate were informally centered in a private rich man's club on lovely Catalina Island, which is visited in the film, the Tuna Club, which appears in Chinatown as the sinister Albacore Club. But this one was real. The syndicate, however, not only owned the San Fernando Valley, it controlled the press in Los Angeles via the Los Angeles Times, which was owned by Chandler and Otis. And meanwhile, one of the clique began to buy options on land along the Owens River at the eastern foot of the High Sierras, and when he had enough options, he exercised his right to buy. But all this land in the San Fernando Valley and the Owens Valley was worth little without the aqueduct to bring the Owens River water to Southern California. The syndicate had no intention of paying for this aqueduct themselves. To convince the citizens of Los Angeles to finance a $25 million bond, that is a civic debt, to build the aqueduct, the project sponsors secretly dumped tens of thousands of water from Los Angeles reservoirs and storage tanks into sewers, where the water eventually ended up in the Pacific Ocean. We see that in the film. That really happened. Yes, that really happened, and thus the syndicate created an artificial Los Angeles water famine. The watering of lawns was prohibited. Water was talked about being rationed. Faced with this artificial drought, and it was an artificial drought created by the syndicate and urged on by Harrison Gray Otis's Los Angeles Times, the citizens approved the bond issue for the building of the aqueduct. It was an enormous project and took 8 years to finish, finished only in 1913. But the land syndicate wasn't actually interested in bringing water to the city of Los Angeles. They were only concerned about the 108,000 acres of dry and unirrigated land in the San Fernando Valley that they bought up for $5 to $10 an acre. So the $25 million aqueduct paid for by the debt of the citizens of Los Angeles actually came to an end in the northern part of the San Fernando Valley, which at that time was not even in the city of Los Angeles. No problem. In 1915, the men of vision engineered the annexation of the valley to the city of Los Angeles, thereby technically fulfilling the deal with the taxpayers. At that point, the valley was essentially empty. But over time, the men of vision proceeded to sell their now well-watered land for $500 to $1,000 an acre, land they bought it from $5 to $10 an acre, making an estimated profit of $100 million in 1915 dollars. That's about $3 or $4 billion today. It came at the expense of the farmers and ranchers in the Owens Valley, who were destroyed by the theft of the water, and at the expense of the citizens of Los Angeles, whose taxes paid for it all. And actually, the Owens Valley project didn't solve the Los Angeles water problem. The city was growing too fast. Medium-term relief was provided by the Boulder Dam on the Colorado River and the building of a 400-mile long aqueduct in the 1930s. The Owens Valley project did, however, starting before World War II, create the great suburban sprawl of the modern San Fernando Valley, which I grew up in. Okay, so I want to now talk about the connection between the movie and reality. Of course, we've already done that with the land swindle, but there's more. The inspiration for how Evelyn Mulwray looked and her experiences had to do with Robert Towne, the screenwriter's personal experiences. It was Towne's wife, Julie Payne, the daughter of actor Robert Payne, who had a black dot flaw in her right eye, which always disturbed her. That's the origin of Evelyn Mulwray's flaw. And Towne's earlier girlfriend, Barry Chase, the daughter of Borden Chase, a famous screenwriter, once found her father naked in bed with her sister. So the incest element had a reality as well. Well, that's Hollywood. Writers draw their inspirations from all sorts of real events. My best friends in high school were the sons of writers for the sitcom Leave It to Beaver, as I've said, and they sometimes found versions of their high school adventures on national television. Writers are vultures. And here's more example of real and R-E-E-L and real R-E-A-L. During the filming of Chinatown, Jack Nicholson in reality was having a sexual relationship with Angelica Houston, the young daughter of John Huston. So when John Huston, as evil Noah Cross, asks Jake Gittes nastily if he's sleeping with his daughter, the question cuts across fiction into something that was really happening. He actually was sleeping with John Huston's daughter. Something real Yes, but also steeped in myth making, where Hollywood stars date Hollywood stars who are the daughters of Hollywood legends. But there's a more grotesque link between Chinatown and Jack Nicholson's reality. Jack Nicholson grew up in working class New Jersey, thinking that Ethel Mae Nicholson was his mother, the father had deserted the family, and June Nicholson was his sister. But in the summer of 1974, just before Chinatown was released, he learned the truth from a Time magazine reporter who was researching his life. June Nicholson was not only his sister, she was his mother. Ethel Mae wasn't his mother, she was his grandmother. So you get Chinatown in reality. And this had been hidden from him his entire life. And Nicholson was shattered by the discovery. And of course, there's another way that Chinatown encodes its bleak story into bleak reality. Chinatown has a repeated focus on underage girls. Hollis Mulray is slandered in the Noah Cross-controlled press for allegedly having an affair with an underage girl. Actually, Hollis is protecting Catherine from Noah Cross. Evelyn Mulray was raped at 15 by her evil, all-powerful father. Chinatown ends with evil Noah Cross spearing away young Catherine, his daughter slash granddaughter, to do it all again. But real events that transpired shortly after Chinatown was finished give extra weight to this theme in the film, because Chinatown foreshadows a crime by Roman Polanski himself. A couple of years after Chinatown, Polanski, using Jack Nicholson's empty mansion, drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl. Well, he paid her mother for the opportunity. In 1977, he fled to France to evade prison for his own Noah Cross-like crime. As a dual French and Polish citizen, and France had no extradition to the US, he was safe as long as he stayed in France. He went on to a good filmmaking career in Europe. In 1979, just 2 years after he fled the United States on a charge of underage rape, his film Tess of the D'Urbervilles was nominated in the Academy Award for Best Picture and Polanski for Best Director. In 2002, for The Pianist, Polanski won the Oscar for Best Director. Well, that was okay, as long as he remained in France. But California has tried to extradite Polanski when he left France for another country, and both times it failed. And it's an interesting story, too. I'm going to end with this. When Polanski arrived in Switzerland in 2009 to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Zurich Film Festival, he was arrested on a California extradition warrant. After 2 months in Swiss detention, he was released on house arrest to his mansion in beautiful Gstaad, Switzerland. Many famous Hollywood figures protested the attempt to extradite him. The list includes Guillermo del Toro, Martin Scorsese, Meryl Streep, David Lynch, Michael Mann, Harrison Ford, Jeremy Irons, and Whoopi Goldberg. Harvey Weinstein also spoke in his support, perhaps not surprisingly. To be sure, 70% of public opinion in France supported Polanski being extradited to California. But in 2010, the Swiss government denied extradition. And in 2011, Polanski returned to the Zurich Film Festival to receive his Lifetime Achievement Award. Then, when Polanski was in Poland in 2015 to make a new movie, California again tried for extradition. But Polish courts, right up to the Polish Supreme Court, ruled against extradition, citing Polanski's rehabilitation, and that under Polish law, the statute of limitations for the crime had long since passed. Besides, Polanski was about to make an expensive new movie in Warsaw. Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown. Robert Towne had hoped to make a Jake Gittes trilogy. Chinatown was only intended as the first of three films. 1937 covering the story of Los Angeles water. Then would come 1947 covering land development in the San Fernando Valley. And finally, 1957 tracing the killing of the public transportation system in Los Angeles in order to let the automobile and the freeway own the city. The second film eventually got made, but it was a failure. The third film of the Jake Gittes trilogy, the freeway film of 1957, which would be really interesting, was never even attempted, although Town wrote a script. But Town remained a talented screenwriter and went on to write the first of the two Mission Impossible films, 1996 and 2000. These were entertaining movies, Tom Cruise vehicles, but they were mere spectacles. There's nothing profound or socially questioning about them. Town here was playing the role of B-movie screenwriter Joe Gillis from Sunset Boulevard. Well, the films made Town rich. So finally, what is the significance of the title of the film? What is the significance of Chinatown? Chinatown is a metaphor for any place or situation where lawlessness, bribery, and moral rot prevail, making it pointless to try to intervene. It means that fighting systemic corruption, unbridled greed, the power of the wealthy, and absolute evil is futile because the game is rigged by the powerful. And because it's rigged by the powerful, justice is impossible. It signifies accepting defeat, letting go of the need for fairness. It means acknowledging that some broken situations cannot be fixed. Go home and live your life, as Jake Gittes tells his first clients at the beginning of the film twice. It's the history of Los Angeles. Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back for questions. Okay. I see there's some questions in chat. Let me just take a look about them first. So, does anyone know if the remaining class recordings will make it to YouTube? I don't know the answer to that.
I would say the answer to that is yes.
Yes. Then Shelley says, it's striking that the thing is called Chinatown, but the Chinese servants were protective and innocent of collusion and had not been bought off. Yeah, it's called Chinatown in part because there was an earlier traumatic experience that Jake Gittes had when he was a cop, when he was trying to protect a Chinese woman in Chinatown, and whatever that's what his beat was, and he was told to stay away from it, and whatever he did ended up with her being killed. So that and nobody was ever punished for that. And so Chinatown came to be a metaphor, Shelley, for when the powerful run everything and get away with everything. And as Polanski got away with everything. So I think that's the idea. And the idea is that Los Angeles is Chinatown, all of it. Or for that matter, the United States is Chinatown, all of it. Okay. So, questions? Lou.
You're muted, Lou. You're still muted. There you go.
So Art, you've done it again. This is absolutely terrific, stunningly so. Thank you. I would like to say a few things about the first of all, I love the fact that you have chosen films that have different layers. I mean, it's nice to have a good fascinating detective story on top.
Yeah.
But always, I love having the historical background that you elaborate on. That one, and the philosophy, the philosophical aspects, and the the justice and so on in real life. I just love that aspect of the whole series.
Oh, great.
And I would like to say,
Lou, I just want to say that before we went on, we were talking about doing a small mini, maybe 4 films over the summer.
terrific. I
Okay.
love the multi-levels at which this is taking place.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the history and the economics of the history.
Yeah.
You know, a really good economic system is one that, through resource allocation from lower valued uses to higher valued uses, talking about land and water here, creates wealth. It creates wealth. And that's a good system. And that's one of the things that a good economic system does. And the other thing that a good one does is that takes that wealth and it distributes it in some fair way, where, to my sense of things, fairness is, you know, it's rewarding those people who have worked hard, who have produced something valuable. Maybe they have been innovative. They've been willing to bear the risk in an uncertain world of investing in certain things. And that's another thing that the good economic system does. And in this case, what we have is and that system is usually fragmented, you know. I mean, ownership of private property and free markets and all that stuff. But in this case, there was not fragmentation, there was monopoly, and it had to be monopoly. I mean, this is a good thing because of the massive economies of scale. You can't do this in a fragmented way. But there was also monopoly of information about this. So the planning and the infrastructure construction, those are two things. One is a good thing, the construction, the planning. But the other is the information which needs to be made available to be fair to everyone. And without that, you know, what you have is an obscure, a kind of an opaque bureaucracy with cronyism, connection with selected people, and their power and control of that information enabled them to buy cheap and sell dear, and they produced nothing. They captured the wealth, all of the wealth that was created, and they got none of it was given to the rest of the community. And that is what, for me, makes this a valid criticism of that form of capitalism that happened in the LA basin back in the early 1900s. It doesn't have to be that way. Capitalism can deliver. And here in Santa Cruz, we have a rail transportation commission, and it's open. We don't know where the extent, they're not hiding where the extensions are going to go and where the stations are going to be. It's open to the public. We can go in and get that information if we want to. Well, I'll shut up. I just wanted to indicate that it is a good criticism of the way in which capitalism operated at that time and that place. But it is not a total criticism of it.
It certainly was an intertwined syndicate because the Otis family and the Chandler family intermarried, and then you get Otis Chandler, who's the owner of the LA Times, and then his descendants for 100 years run the LA Times. And the LA Times was very anti-union in the 30s and all of that stuff. And they were in control of the information. There was a small local newspaper that was pointing out what was happening, and the Chandler interest drove it out of business before it could inform people completely about the aqueduct plot. I guess you could say they were still gambling, that the entrepreneurs were still gambling Uh, but they were sure making it weighted on their side that it would all work out. And it's the foundation of those vast fortunes that still are important in Los Angeles 100 years later, 130 years later now. The families are still there. So, I mean, the other thing I want to say, this isn't related to what you were saying, but what amazed me in talking with Kaczynski about the Manson case was he said to me he was infuriated that he couldn't make it to Los Angeles for the party. And it was only the next morning that he read in the newspaper what had happened. And he said this is a kind of Polish thing, as Polanski is a sort of Polish thing. Kaczynski is one of these people who, when he talked, he would hold his hand like this and then go like that, sardonic East European humor. And Polanski certainly has some of that too. So, but the capitalist part of it is that this wasn't a fair capitalist game. There was a swindle. They bought the land. They convinced the taxpayers to pay for the land, that the way to make it valuable. They didn't pay for it. And then they sold it at a huge profit. It did create the San Fernando Valley, though. There's that part of it, but at a huge cost. Richard, I think you're next.
Please unmute, Richard.
The flip side of making a flourishing San Fernando Valley was totally destroying a flourishing agricultural environment in the Owens Valley.
Yes, that's right.
There was a big lake up there that supported a paddle wheel steamer, and they just siphoned off the water from the foothills of the Sierras and ran it south.
Sierra.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. All those farmers were destroyed. And at one point, they actually took up arms to try to prevent the building of the aqueduct. And there was real fighting that was going on. And the National Guard, the California National Guard, had to be called in to suppress it. So that was also in the greater interest of Los Angeles. And Los Angeles still owns that area, actually. So there's that part of it. But go on, Richard.
That was my comment right there.
Yeah. Those farmers were destroyed. The small farmers were destroyed. It had been because of the water was siphoned off. But this is also part of the artificial nature of Los Angeles, which it shouldn't be there. It does not have the water resources to support the population of 300,000, let alone 3 million. And there's a lot of money to be made in providing that water. That's what was going. Yeah, Roger.
On a different topic, I'm just curious whether Chinatown was a commercial success. I ask because I've heard that a scene involving child sex was eliminated from The Godfather because people said that it would not be accepted. But then 2 years later, this movie was made, and it's at the forefront. Can you explain that and explain what happened afterwards? Yeah.
There's a scene in The Godfather that has been restored, which has to do with Michael Corleone getting married in Sicily. And he marries this beautiful Sicilian girl. And there's a scene where he's taking off her nightgown and her breasts are revealed. And that girl was 16 years old when they made the film.
The scene that I heard about was that the Hollywood mogul who
right.
that there was a scene showing him involved with a young girl, and they did eliminate that.
There are scenes where she's there, but no sex scenes. No. Look, transgression sells.
Was Chinatown a commercial success? Did it make a lot of money or?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
The second attempt to make the movie failed. That was in 1990. It was called The Two Jakes. It's not a bad movie, but in that movie, Jake Gittes finds out that Catherine is now married to a land developer, and he falls in love with her. And I think that was probably a bridge too far for a lot of people. And so the movie failed. Nicholson was the director, but that was one of his few failures. And then Town could never sell the third movie, the Freeway movie, which would have been an interesting movie to make. Um, but I think Transgression sells, and they were playing around with this, and I'm sure. I mean, Polanski really was involved with underage girls, so there was so that's where that theme certainly appealed to him, even though it's all very indirect. It's only things are said, nothing is ever shown. And the only scene that's shown with Hollis Mulray and Catherine, that turns out to be a scene where he's protecting Catherine from Noah.
Mm.
He's not trying to seduce her or anything. And she appreciates that he's being a fatherly figure to her. So it's all very indirect. I mean, one of the things that's going on in the late 60s and early 70s in Hollywood is saying, how far can you go? It was clear that the Hayes office was finished, but the question was, how far could you get, how much could you get away with? And the answer was, you could get away with a lot, but nobody knew where the boundary was. But certainly the money men at Paramount were concerned. I mean, after all, the point of the movie is to have butts in seats, to get people to pay money to see it.
Mhm.
And so there is a paradox, a contradiction between something that is intriguing and something that goes too far. So they were playing with it. They were, okay.
Hey,
Or,
Art,
yes,
this is Doug.
Doug,
To
yeah.
yeah, the point you mentioned that they were trying to see what they can get away with. How is I'm thinking this is the era of we're talking post Watergate, there's the Vietnam. There's a lot of darkness in the culture. Do you think the reason that transgression sells is because it's really connected to what's happening around culturally speaking in America?
Um, I think uh, Watergate was part of it. Vietnam is part of it. When you have on the cover of Life magazine on December 1969, color images of the My Lai massacre with the civilian bodies piled up, and that's on the cover of Life magazine, and it's saying, uh, this is what we did. I think that's a shock to the system that happens. It's actually, I think myself, it's one of the reasons that Colin Powell could never run for president, because the fact was he was the executive officer in the Americal division in the year after My Lai, and ordinary GIs wrote to him as the exec, telling him something terrible happened. Something terrible happened here. You need to investigate it. And he never did. He was part of the cover up.
Hmm.
So there's all of, so you combine all of these things, that sense of corruption is really there. Although I think, Polanski just felt totally betrayed by Los Angeles. He had made it big in Los Angeles with Rosemary's Baby, and then he married Sharon Tate, and she was pregnant, and then bam, it's all destroyed. So that's the California story, and he himself was a very cynical kind of person. So that's where that's also going on. But it certainly expressed the nature of feeling that things had gone dreadfully wrong. And you know, there's a world of conspiracy theories where the conspiracy theory in Watergate turned out to be true. And the film was being made, it was released right at the point where Nixon resigned.
Mm.
So, but it was a success financially. Mark.
So to go back to the third proposed film that never got made about the replacement of the streetcars, and with that film was made, but it was Roger Rabbit, wasn't it? That
Yes, Roger Rabbit. Yeah.
where that was the theme of that film.
Huh.
Pacific Electric, the red cars were running with the thing, and there was all these conspiracies to melt melt the tunes, but the cars were going to take over, the freeways were going to get built, and it was a powerful theme there.
Well, I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, about half a block from where the red cars used to run down the railway line.
Mm-hmm.
And the red cars were replaced by Chandler Boulevard.
Right.
Right.
Oh,
so
it's right there.
yeah. So it's not only that they have the land swindle, but they commemorate.
Hey, Art, you have a chat from Shelley, and I'm not sure if you addressed that yet.
No, I don't see it. Oh,
To me, it was striking that the thing is called Chinatown, but the Chinese servants were protective and innocent of collusion.
Yeah,
Right.
he already did.
Oh, did he? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
Right. The Chinese servants are protective of Evelyn and Catherine. They are. Yeah. But Chinatown is a metaphor having to do with a totally corrupt system. And so what you have is Jake, who as a cop had tried to challenge that system and had failed, and he gets to replay it and fails again.
Yeah, well, of course, I understand that it's a metaphor, but it's still interesting to me that the actual, that it did not take the opportunity to have a racist comment by, by having the actual Chinese be.
Jake actually makes a racist comment when he first goes to.
Right, he does.
Yeah. So,
And also complains about a midget.
yeah. Right. So, I mean, the thing about Jake is he thinks he's cynical, but he has no idea how things really work. And Doug.
Yeah. But two things. The Chinatown obviously has a historical,
Yes.
reference point where obviously there appeared to be lawlessness within the Chinese immigration population, with maybe gangs and in the impossibility of solving crimes, things like that. There must have been something like that.
I mean, it's not really explained, but my guess is that's part of that it was gangs, that the girl that he loved was involved somehow in gang stuff.
And the second question is, how did you meet this guy Kosinski? Were you on I'm going to talk to as many Polish people that I can, or what's going on there?
It had to do with my connection to the Solidarity labor movement.
Oh, wow. Do tell.
And it's an odd connection. So there were people in the Solidarity labor, the intellectuals who were involved in the Solidarity movement. These were Catholic intellectuals, basically. And I knew a couple of them. And they were explaining to me how he was still the Cardinal of Krakow, was organizing this connection between the church and the working class. So in Krakow, they built a cathedral, and the cathedral is St. Joseph the Worker. That is St. Joseph the Carpenter, Jesus's physical father, or whatever you want. And that connection, that one of the people was an ancient historian. So I got to know what was going on that way. Actually, there were two people I got to know that way. And Kosinski was a big supporter of solidarity. And the Polish secret police began to slander him and to say that he was a plagiarist and never wrote the Painted Bird, and that he was simply a CIA agent, and that his being a novelist was a cover for his CIA connections.
Mm.
And through the connections that I had with the Catholic people, I got connected to him, and I said, as a historian, it doesn't make any sense. You've written 7 other novels since The Painted Bird. What kind of a cover is it that requires you to keep writing novels that are successful and being made into movies? I think the obvious thing is you're a novelist. So he really liked that, and we got together. Me and my wife got together, and everybody here is smart, but there are 2 people I've met in my life who exist at a level much higher than us. And Kosinski was one. He was so intense. He was an intense listener, an intense talker, and he was real. He had gotten out of Poland in 1956 by faking a letter from NYU accepting him as a professor there. And, that took a lot of gambling guts to do, but that's how he got out. That's how he got out. So he was a fascinating guy. He was a skier, he was a swimmer, he was a horse rider, and he eventually developed congestive heart failure, and he committed suicide, which I've never forgiven him for. All right, you can't ride a horse, keep riding.
Mm-hmm.
But he had to be who he was. So yeah, so that's how I got to know him, and that's how he told me that this and many other stories, but some of which are not fit for public consumption.
I know the chair. Hold on, I'm sorry, Chair. I know you have your hand raised, but just a quick question for you, Art. Did Kosinski say anything about the rape accusations against Polanski?
Oh, they were real. I mean, he drugged the girl. It was at Jack Nicholson's house. Jack Nicholson was skiing in Colorado, and he had the use of the house. Polanski had the use of the house. He drugged the girl, started to take topless pictures of her, and then which was already he had gotten the mother to agree to that, and then it just went farther than that. And then he didn't want to go to jail for it, so he fled the country.
Well, Cher has her hand up, Art.
Yes, Cher.
Yeah. I'm not sure I want to follow on that, but I had a comment about the theme. It seems to me it's not just that there's an entire political apparatus that controls everything. There's also an element, I think, that Nicholson tries to explain that you can't understand. The complexities are so great that you can't even understand. And when you try to help someone, when he tried to help someone, he actually caused the woman's death. And I want to relate that to Shelley's question about the racial element in the film, because I think in some ways, it's also about lack of cultural competence. So Nicholson's character first of all, when the gardener tries to explain to him that it's a saltwater pond early on, he doesn't see it, he doesn't hear it. And that's also part of the complexity of Chinatown, that he's not competent in terms of his racial understandings, he's not competent in terms of his understanding of the women that are around him.
He early in the film, he's telling a racist joke, the Chinaman joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes.
Mhm.
My feeling is that's actually pretty authentic for Los Angeles in 1937. That would be the case. There aren't any Hispanic people in that movie except for Lou Escobar, who's corrupt.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Well,
it-
also we see from his perspective completely through the film, including when he blacks out, the film blacks out.
Right.
So all of the ignorance about what's going on, about the interrelationship of the two stories,
Right.
is his inability to put together the larger story. In fact, I want to raise something that I saw online that I don't know that I think this is that valid, but one analyst claimed that the murder of Hollis is done
Yeah.
because of the daughter. I mean, there is the argument outside the Pig and Whistle, and
Yeah.
the Cross tells Jack Nicholson that the argument was over the daughter, and we assume it's Evelyn, but likely it was Catherine. And part of the reason that I wonder about it is because the public discrediting of Hollis in the newspaper
Yeah.
would bring him down. Why would Cross then take the risk of murdering him almost immediately after that comes out?
I guess the answer is it wasn't enough. That discrediting him wasn't enough, that he knew too much about the water deal.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a threat to investment.
I like the two readings though, and I'm willing to entertain both of them at the same time,
Right.
because the one thing about the murder of Hollis as being a crime of passion at the instant when is that it entwines the two stories more tightly. Otherwise, you kind of have two separate things going on.
Yeah.
The incest and the political situation. That would bring the two of them together.
I guess they could both exist simultaneously. He's angry at Hollis because Hollis is preventing him from taking Catherine.
I
And
like
he's
that.
angry at Hollis because Hollis is opposed to the water deal. That both
Hmm.
are happening simultaneously. And that at the heart of it is
What that was.
he wants what he wants, and anybody who stands in his way is going to be destroyed.
Hmm.
And whatever it is he wants, anybody who stands in his way for whatever he wants is going to be destroyed. And then somebody says, Dolores says, there's such a clear resemblance between Houston's character and Trump. One type of individual exists above decency. And I mean, we just saw that in the Louisiana
Primary.
primary.
Well,
Yeah.
I like to call that person not the Antichrist, but an Antichrist.
Yes.
Prototypical Antichrist. You know, the one that Hitler certainly was one. Houston's character on a much smaller scale. That was just Los Angeles, not the world.
Yeah.
And now we have Trump, who is doing the same type of thing. And that Houston plays that so well. His eyes just freak me out. That one scene where he talks about one type of person. That line was perfect. One type of person who can I forget why he said it, can pretty well get away with whatever they wanted sometimes. Yeah. And that takes not only that type of person, but a certain mesmerizing charisma, which what Cohen, I guess, his former lawyer said, you know, he has the ability to hypnotize people. Trump, they just don't know what else to do, so they go along with it. And I certainly think Houston's character had a bit of that potential, that character in it too. And I rambled, but you see what I mean?
It was right as I was about to start the lecture that I realized that he mispronounces intentionally Jake Giddy's name.
Right.
He's constantly
Exactly.
correcting him. He doesn't
Yes.
care.
Right.
And
And they also give weird nicknames to people, you know.
Yeah, well, Trump constantly mispronounced Kamala Harris's name.
Yes, right.
And then when confronted with it, he said, I don't care.
Right. Yes,
So,
that's right.
yeah. Lou.
Yeah, I have a couple of related questions. First of all, in the movie, there was an attempt of the land speculators to mask their purchases of land by attributing them to those people who were in the hospice and scheduled to die almost right away.
Yeah.
And the question is, the first question is, how could that be arranged? I missed the mechanics, and that was very mysterious to me. And the second thing is, I'm wondering, is there some relationship between the fictional movie and the way in which those four big-time land speculators operated?
I'm going to answer that, but I want to go back to Dolores's point. It is shocking how much the John Huston character,
Yes.
Cross character, has these Trump characteristics.
Yes.
I mean, that film is 50 years old.
That's correct. Yeah.
And there is the character right there.
That's right.
The land speculators did not have to go through false buying. They were just buying up the land for $5 and $10 as a syndicate. And I think the people who were selling it were thinking they were getting a good deal because the land, it was dry wheat land and some grazing land, and it was worthless basically. And it was empty. The valley was empty. It didn't look like it was going to be something that could be developed. In reality, that whole nursing home stuff is just added. Well, partly it's added for fun.
No, I don't think so.
It's added that there's a racial aspect of it in that Nicholson says, "Well, we want to bring my Jewish mother here," and they say, "Oh no, that's not fun."
I didn't get that out of that. So what I got was that they had put those people in there as a kind of a saying, you know, we're going to eventually get this land and we're going to put you in this place and you'll get to stay there forever and it'll be a wonderful place. As a backstory on this, I got to tell you what my niece's mate, I guess you'd call him, he has a house in Spain. He's a Spaniard and he's getting quite elderly. And there's a group of people who are going all over Spain and doing almost the same thing. They're going into older people's houses and saying, you can stay in this house until you die. It's fine. And we'll pay you. And then they offer them just a fraction, really, of what the house is worth. It's not a reverse mortgage. It's much worse. And so when I saw those people in the nursing home, that's what I first thought of, the people that they were gathered all together. They had this land and they knew they were going to sell it at peanuts. And they got their little thing, which is that they got to go into this nursing home.
Well, I think the idea was that nobody would know that there was a syndicate that was buying up the land because then people would jack up the price.
That's right. So they offered them that little nursing home and they made it was really nice. So even when the relatives came, they thought it was a really neat thing. And they're pulling the same stunt in Spain right now to older people in their homes.
Art, Joan has a question for you.
It seems like it's the right time because it's 12 and Jim's about to shut us all up for a while. No. Here comes.
I'm not doing that. It's our last time together.
Art, what you've mentioned is the possibility of a course for OLLI this summer of about 4 films.
Yeah.
And I heard Mark Gordon say, how about something fun or funny for the summer? Yeah. And I think that dark comedies is what you would do good at. You mentioned Some Like It Hot, but if you could find some where there's that twist, then there's a lot more for you to talk about. Just a comedy we can all watch. We need you to untangle.
Why don't we do? Certainly, we should do Some Like It Hot.
Okay, well, think of us 3 more dark comedies.
Well,
How about Bringing Up Baby?
Inglorious Bastards.
Inglorious Bastards. Okay.
What a movie. Wow.
That's 2. Okay.
Well, we can all send
War of
in
the
suggestions.
Roses.
Send suggestions to James Green.
Yeah.
That's 2. Okay. Dick, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's just a minor point, getting to the rest home as something to play with when Jake has just been given permission to walk around the restroom, the rest home, and they're standing in the doorway looking in the common area
Yeah.
full of old people. Over his shoulder in the far background, very briefly, there's a man who's standing, and he reaches his hand over and grabs the fanny of the nurse standing next to him.
Yes, right.
And she has to push him away. It's a fleeting scenario. And I thought, why did he put that in
And
there?
what do you make of that? What do you think the point of that was? Nothing happens on the screen that isn't intended. So what is
I
the meaning of
saw it as just playful.
really? It's sexual harassment.
That's right.
But,
There's
but
that
Not in that
too.
era. Not in that era.
it depended on how old the person was, because when my mother was in the nursing home, the really elderly guys would lose their inhibitions and do weird things like that.
Yeah.
You know? And so I just thought it was some comment on how old the person was, and the nurse knew it, you know.
I thought it was a comment on how they didn't rebuke well, of course, it was before the time that
Right.
women rebuked men for patting them on the bottom, but also it was the time when it shows that they're indulged completely, given wonderful things to eat, they can play around and so forth, and you know,
As long as they
it's a
sign
nice
over their
place for
land.
them.
As long as they sign.
Exactly.
Sign over their land.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
Well, I wanted to say one more thing. There was one on the loss of the railroad in LA. It was a cartoon, Roger Rabbit.
it's a cartoon.
Yeah, Roger Rabbit. Yeah, that was about that.
Yeah. I mean, there was a working public transportation system that extended into the San Fernando Valley in the early 50s. And these are the red cars, and they got rid of them. And it was cheap, and it was, in terms of ecology, it wasn't so bad.
Can I ask one more thing? If you're going to do the summer thing, will that be advertised through OLLI then to sign up for it?
That's up to them. I'm sure it will be.
Oh, okay.
You'll
I just
have
wanted
to figure that one out. We
Okay,
haven't done
right. I just wanted to look. I wanted to
we
look
need
for
to
it and
know-
get in there.
We haven't done it in years, having a summer course, but I'm sure we can explore it. And hopefully we can pull it in.
And actually, because it's Zoom, it doesn't matter if you're traveling. You can Zoom.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's okay. All right.
So Art, thanks for this bleak movie.
Oh,
was
don't
saying-
look up. Oh my God. Yes, don't look up.
And then,
That's a wonderful one.
I guess I had to conclude that Chinatown is sort of Trump's favorite movie, perhaps.
Yeah. That would be very interesting to know if he's ever commented.
It would
I
be,
don't
wouldn't it?
think he
I think
watches
Noah
movies.
Cross is his hero. So
No, watching
I don't
movies
think he could
takes too
stand
much
2 hours
concentration. I
one
don't think he
place.
can sustain the concentration. to
Yeah,
watch a
right.
movie.
I think
that's one thing that Noah Cross doesn't suffer from is ADD. No.
Yeah.
you know about don't look up. Another thing.
Oh, don't look
Yes,
up.
don't look up.
Would be
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
All right.
you know,
I'm writing these
Meryl-
down. All right.
Meryl Streep plays a Trump character, and I think that if they had had a man play the president, then they would have been sued because it is fantastic.
Oh,
But
it
of
is.
course, it's a woman, and so it's fiction.
Mhm.
But it's really remarkable. But
That's a
anyway,
wonderful movie. Yeah.
it was great.
Okay.
You know, Art, it's extremely difficult to say goodbye to you each week, but it's really horrific to think about saying goodbye for months. So we hope you come back soon and we can
Thank
work.
you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
let's all thank
you,
Art.
Art.
Very hard for me to
Wonderful.
say goodbye to.
Joan, I hope
Yeah.
I wasn't premature in saying goodbye.
Thank you. And thank you, Jim. Jim, thank you so much for handling the Zoom and everything. You did a great job.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was
thank you
really
very much.
great. I love
All
the way it turned into a seminar on politics.
Okay.
I'm
All
not,
right, thank
I'm
you.
not ending the meeting. I'm not doing that. So somebody else.
Okay, well, we'll be back in the summer.
All right.
People
Okay.
get a hold of my email if they want to talk about things. And I think, Shelley, you and I had just started a long conversation. So,
Yeah.
but you can get my email and I will immediately respond. It's okay.
All
And we'll
right.
talk about
Good.
dark comedies in the fall. Okay.
Right.
I mean, in the summer.
In the summer.
It's
Summer.
hard for me to say goodbye to everybody.
Oh, we really love this.
You know, say goodbye for the summer. It's
Good.
traditionally been very hard.
See
Yeah.
you in the summer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
All right.
Right, I'm
All
about
right.
to
Be
press-
well, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye.